When beta is elevated, all the things that are associated with intense exercise are correlated to it. I have been firm on this statement that Mito is the next keto.
Oh yeah.
But I think Mito is what everyone's going to be talking about. There's a state when you have when you don't have enough energy. It's called insufficient cellular energy states, ICE. And then in the brain, it's called brain energy gap. But it's the same idea, where there's a shortfall of energy, and that leads to a series of dysfunctions in the body. With just think about, like, if you don't have the energy to run the body properly, the mitochondria, the cells that are running kind of like I was. They're pushing, and they're getting overwhelmed. They're not having time to have autophagy in the cell, mitophagy for the mitochondria. They can't recover. They don't have the rest and digest parasympathetic time for the cell, because we're pushing them so hard. So they're running into dysfunction. And then you get glycation, which is blood sugar damage. You get inflammation, you get oxidation, you get methylation errors. You get all these signs of pro-aging, where you're aging faster than your chronological age biologically. And you have a greater propensity towards all disease. When insulin's elevated, you run into metabolic syndrome. And like all of these things are happening. And glycation, which is blood sugar damage, like leads to advanced glycation end products, ages, like literally aging you. So like this is a state that like begets itself. So not having enough energy leads to overworked mitochondria that are dysfunctional and not having enough of them. And when you do hormetic stress, you can actually create more mitochondrial biogenesis, so that you have more of these powerhouses to make the energy currency for the body, adenosine triphosphate, ATP. And they're running more optimally. So it's just a downward spiral, if you will, of like when you don't have enough energy, that you run into more dysfunction, and dysfunction causes a lack of energy, because like when you're insulin resistant, you're not getting enough glucose into the cell to produce energy. And unless you're doing a ketogenic diet, then you're not getting ketones either. And you're not metabolically flexible. And so it's just a downward spiral from all directions. So that's something that you clearly want to avoid, and you want to improve your metabolic health, lower your blood sugar, lower chronically elevated insulin. And there's a number of ways to do that, and certainly take care of your mitochondria. And I can discuss those ingredients and concepts as well if you want.
Absolutely. There's a lot that comes into mitochondria, and that's where I say with my in the clinic here, daily, people are walking in with mitochondrial insufficiency in some way, where it's just so many things are based on that. And then to tell clients, all right, so this impacts it, toxins impact it, nutrients impact it, but you need to get the nutrients in first. So your gut needs to be good. Then, environmental, and then stress, and then, and sleep, exercise. It's just this whole circle of things that impact it. And so they walk away going, whoa. So that in itself shows how important the mitochondria really are. That's our fuel, that's our energy source, that's our base of living, really. It gives our body the energy to go. So yes, let's talk about all those different aspects.
So elevating NAD levels is pretty critical to mitochondrial health. There's a ratio of NAD to NADH in the citric acid cycle, the Krebs cycle, sometimes called, or tricarboxylic acid cycle. It's all the same thing. Where you're that crank where you're producing ATP. So you want to find ways to increase NAD levels. So that can be IV NAD. That's probably the best way. That could be intranasal NAD, which is probably the second best way. And then there's some oral supplements that you can do, that like NMN is probably my favorite over, I really don't like Niagen. I think the data is pretty weak, the nicotinamide riboside.
David Sinclair's done a lot for that, the NMN, hasn't he?
David Sinclair and Rhonda Patrick and Peter Attia are all pretty supportive of NMN. And then beyond that, I would look at some things that help on the electron transport chain side of the equation, like CoQ10. In the reduced form, ubiquinol is the most bioactive form. PQQ, which was actually considered for vitamin status at one point, which is a great cofactor, a great synergist with CoQ10.
Yeah, not many people know about the PQQ in Australia. It's probably, I think, I would say would be a little bit more well known in the US, UK.
Yeah, it's expensive too.
Yeah.
It's not cheap. So taking 10 to 20 milligrams a day can be pricey. But again, this is like you're saying, I think this is base, like when you're taking care of the mitochondria.
Yeah.
And then from there, I would look at some things like reducing the other side of it, like getting inflammation under control, glycation and oxidation. So for me, those things would be several things. For glycation, I would look at a glucose disposal agent that's akin to metformin, but shown to be superior is berberine. And then I've patented a form called dihydroberberine that's about 5 to 10 times more bioavailable and lasts about twice as long in the plasma. It's actually
I've not tried it yet.
But it's what berberine converts into in the gut is dihydroberberine. So it's just a more active form. And then on a inflammation front, I like two things. I like curcumin, but I've patented a form, tetrahydrocurcumin, that's again an active metabolite that solves some of the bioavailability issues.
Yeah.
And then I really like CBD. Like everyone's heard of CBD, cannabidiol, like a phytocannabinoid, but I don't think most people know about the endocannabinoid system and that it's actually a master controller system. Like we're not talking about it in the way it should be talked about, that it literally controls the body, like how the pain, the mood, the inflammation, and a lot of times people have deficiencies. And so these phytocannabinoids can fill in some of these gaps in the endocannabinoid system. So this is going to vary quite a bit in terms of bioindividuality, but it's something worth exploring if you do have mood issues, if you do have depression, if you do have inflammation, etc. And then from there, the oxidation side of the equation, and then also increasing NAD is one of my favorite things, is a group of compounds called the polyphenols. And so one of my favorite ones that's been shown to be the most superior of all the polyphenols. They're all great. There's transresveratrol, pterostilbene, 𝐂𝐨𝐧𝐬𝐶, quercetin. There's a bunch. But ficitin, which occurs in strawberries, has been shown to be the most superior of all of them at increasing NAD levels. So as we age, NAD drops pretty dramatically, our creation of it. And so finding ways to increase natural NAD is helpful. And then, of course, taking something like NMN with it would be great. And then on the other side of the equation, there's something called NADase, the enzyme that breaks down NAD. It's also called CD38. And there's a polyphenol that affects that. Both quercetin affects that, but even more potent is something called apigenin that's found in parsley. And so it's two things. As we age, we make less NAD, like pretty dramatically. And then we also, which affects cellular energy. And then we also more rapidly catabolize or break down that NAD faster. So finding ways to increase production of NAD, like through ficitin, finding ways to reduce the breakdown, like through apigenin, that's going to be synergistic. And then finding ways to enhance the production even further of NAD through like NMN or IV NAD would be ideal. So those would be a series of compounds that I would look at to affect mitochondrial health. And then from there, I like also looking at brown adipose tissue, which is brown because it's so mitochondrial dense. It's super thermogenic. You only have, I don't know what this is in grams off the top of my head, but you only have about 6 to 7 ounces of about let's say a half pound, which is 230-ish grams or something like that on your body.
Yeah.
right? Of like this brown adipose tissue, mostly around your clavicle, your collarbone, because that's your core. That's where thermogenesis is needed.
Yeah.
Up until about 6, 7, 8 months when we're a baby, we lack the ability to shiver to create heat. So we rely on brown adipose tissue. And so this is a highly metabolically active tissue, and it could be one of the, like the holy grails of like how some people can like eat whatever they want, but like not put on weight because they're more thermogenic, because they have more active brown adipose tissue. And it's been shown that cold plunges or cold showers and creates cold thermogenesis. So it actually upregulates that brown adipose tissue. But so does grains of paradise, which is an African spice.
I was going to
So
ask you about that.
those two,
Is this grains of paradise?
yeah, so combining those two would be really effective at upregulating not only the activity of brown adipose tissue, but even the number of cells. So that would be a great way to burn fat, because it's been shown that just a 40 milligram dose burned over 100 calories a day in one dose. So we don't know if like 80 milligrams twice a day, what does that burn? As a non-stimulant, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Especially over time.
Yeah.
And then another one that I've really been having fun researching is an ingredient called BABA. It's beta amino isobutyric acid, and it's known as an exercise mimetic. So there's ingredients that have been out there that are pharmacological, like 𝐂𝐸𝐺𝐻50156, but this is something that occurs naturally in the body. It's a signal that your body releases from 𝐂𝐤𝐵𝐼𝐺 when you're breaking down the amino acids in the muscle pool, that tells the body there's intense exercise happening. And when BABA is elevated, all the things that are associated with intense exercise are correlated to it. So like improved VO2 max, improved bone mineral density, improved muscle mass and strength, improved muscle innervation, improved fat mass reduction, and fatty acid utilization, and glycogen storage, and glucose utilization. All these things like are improved as a result of this intense exercise signal. So taking BABA as a supplement is going to augment that signal. So you're therefore going to get more out of every rep, out of every step, in shorter time. So that's like a really cool ingredient that I think, speaking of holy grails, that could be a holy grail for exercise.